time for the main event. It's the Shoeshine.
All right. What's up, everybody? It's the return of the Shoeshine. You know what it is. Friends from around the world get together to talk about the sweet science. I'm your host, Dave, from the 408. With me, as always, my co-host from the city of brotherly love, Mr. Phillys Drew Evo. ¿Qué pasa, homie? Glad to have you back.
What's up?
Yeah, man.
What's up?
It's been a minute, and I hope we're refreshed. Maybe we needed to take care of our health and wellness for the week. But honestly, Drew, I just couldn't get myself last Monday. Aside from the fact that I had the COVID shot, I really couldn't wrap myself around doing a show and talking about that Boo Boo Andrade fight, number one, and that Thriller circus. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I think we were on the same page that we needed to take a step back and regroup, right? At least on those two things, I wasn't motivated at all. But Drew, what were your thoughts on that Thriller thing? Because you had some really strong words about it earlier to me.
Oh man, where can I get started? Because this whole shit's been pissing me off with Thriller, well, the fuck they call themselves. Because first of all, I watched it. I did not pay for it because I'm not paying my hard-earned money to see a bullshit YouTuber like Jake Paul fight a MMA fighter that absolutely has no strike game whatsoever. So, and here's the thing I'm mostly pissed off about. How people can really buy into this shit with Jake Paul. Like, really. You have Oscar De La Hoya on there. Drunk or high on coke, wherever the hell you want, however you want to see it. That dude embarrassed himself on there. And he even disrespected Steve Cunningham, called him USSR Cunningham. And it's USS Cunningham. And then you got Snoop Dogg fucking disrespecting fighters on there. And Snoop Dogg never stepped in never stepped in a real boxing ring to fight anybody in a boxing fight.
Okay.
And, so here's the thing I do not like at all. My beef with Oscar is you could have had your return fight on fucking DAZN. The network that has your fighters fight on it. And you could have had a whole big card promoting these young fucking prospects you got on your fucking stable on a card and have you as the main fucking event. And you could have made them some fucking money. But no, you chose to go in business for yourself, be a selfish son of a bitch, go on fucking Thriller to make a fucking big time comeback against probably a fucking MMA fighter that can't fucking fight and try to get an easy fucking win. And let me tell you something. Golden Boy, the best time of Golden Boy boxing was when Richard Schaefer was fucking winning it and throwing fights on fucking Showtime.
Damn.
And had fucking Danny Garcia, Sean fucking Porter, Keith Thurman, Amir Khan in the fucking stable, and had all those fucking fighters on it and still making money and having a fucking Floyd Mayweather fight Canelo Alvarez.
Man, you were fired up. I haven't even gotten to our shout outs, man, and the chat is starting to go live. Drew, you're really fired up. I gotta rein you back in because I didn't even get to say hello. First of all, hello to everyone in the chat. Santeo Media, Bella Bling, A-Rod, Bruce, hello. Thank you for joining us, and everybody who supports the Leave It in the Ring Radio Family Network. Emil Carr, David Duenas on Monday nights. Then you got D-Styles and G-Funky on Tuesday nights with HCP. Are you down with HCP? HCP Uncensored on Wednesday nights. And, of course, the Roundtable, where we get together with podcasters from all over the YouTube community to talk about what's going down in the world of boxing. But, Drew, you're still fired up. And as well as a lot of people, man, we're fired up about one way or another. They feel very strongly about whether or not it's a positive thing or a negative thing. And today, I'm surprised that Canelo Alvarez chimed in finally and says it's a different audience, but he really doesn't see anything wrong with it at the moment. He said that the real boxing fans, they want to see Canelo Alvarez fight and that there's a place for that. Okay, so it's almost like he's not dissing it, right? Even though it's Oscar's new thing and he's no longer working with Oscar, he sees a place for it. But I think what's really divisive and polarizing is some of the personalities. I'm talking about Jake Paul. He's very polarizing. And Saturday, we're going to get to Saturday, but the UFC card was pretty good itself. And a lot of boxing fans went over and watched the end of that UFC card. And they may have caught that Jake Paul was there trying to line something up, right? Sonteo Media says, Drew with Oscar De La Hoya. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are fired up about Oscar De La Hoya. We've had to separate what Oscar did, his legacy in boxing early with his career, and promoter Oscar, right? And now we're getting ready to see the return of Oscar De La Hoya, the fighter, again. You and me want to see him fight a real fighter, but because of the YouTube stuff, we're probably going to get him fight a retired UFC fighter that he's aiming for. This guy Eddie Alvarez, a retired UFC fighter. Something easy, right? And that pisses me off too, because there's so many guys, right, that we could see him fight.
He's fighting Philadelphia's own Eddie Alvarez.
And nothing wrong with that. Well, what's wrong with it is that Oscar seems to lack the confidence in taking a fight against even a retired boxer, like, say, Marcos Maidana, who's been trying to get down and back into fighting shape. Or a 45-year-old aging champion who's back in the ring and looking pretty good despite all the knee surgeries. And I'm talking about Sergio Maravilla Martinez. He's very capable and ready to get in there. Bella Bling says, Oscar knows how to party. That he does. That he does. He's well known for that. Maybe he was doing a little too much partying on that Thriller card. But you bring up a good point. The fact that the fight he's going to have is not on DAZN, where he has his top fighters like Ryan Garcia and
I don't
Ortiz.
get started on him.
We will get started on Ryan, because before that goes out the window, I want to get something off my chest about boxing Twitter. I'm just going to do it right now. Let's just get this. Listen.
Do it, Dave.
I love boxing Twitter, okay? We wouldn't have an audience without boxing Twitter. It goes hand in hand. In fact, we were very successful on their live streaming app Periscope, and here we are on YouTube. And I thank everybody who subscribes to the Shoeshine, because it's been very hard to transition over to the YouTube community. We did well. We've been around for more than 2 years, and you and I know about co-hosting with drunk, incapacitated other fellow co-hosts. Who knows what they're on, because we got a long history on the live streaming over there on Periscope. But boxing Twitter can be extremely toxic. And Saturday morning, I literally had to make myself private for a while, because when the news broke that Ryan Garcia was canceling and backing out of his fight with Javier Fortuna, I was one of the very first people to comment on Mike Coppinger's. Everyone says whether or not Mike Coppinger's the greatest journalist or not, or they can't stand him. But I was one of the very first people to comment, okay? I wasn't attacking mental illness, mental health as a joke. I wasn't parodying it, or I wasn't being insensitive, okay? But it didn't take very long for the sycophant army of Ryan Garcia to come after me and call me things like idiot, low IQ. Apparently, you can't criticize a fighter once they throw out the mental health card. Whatever card it is, apparently now we can't criticize a fighter. I'm not criticizing mental health as a legitimate illness, because I have people in my family, in my very own family. I'm talking about direct family members that suffer from depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety. And I had to get through college with ADHD. Okay? And nobody patted me on the back for getting through just normal rites of passage, right? So my comment wasn't insensitive, but I was questioning things. And furthermore, the Ryan Garcia comment on Instagram, there's nothing that says exactly what he's dealing with. So all of Twitter's responding to it saying, leave the dude alone. Hey, man, he suffers from anxiety or this and that. He didn't say what his reason is, other than he needs to take time out for his well-being and health. For all we know, it could be a physical injury. It could be a hand surgery he needs. He just wanted some privacy. But they came after me like animals. Okay? They came after me like animals. And believe me, I wasn't being rude. So this is my new thing is, I'm not going to talk about Ryan Garcia until he fights. I'll talk about him on the Monday after he returns to the ring. And then and only then will I only critique his performance in the ring, because I could really care less what he does in his free time. I could really care less about his new Lamborghini or what new car or where he's going to vacation, because I don't follow the guy on Instagram. I really only want to talk about fighters that are putting in the work and making a splash in the ring. So when we get back to seeing him in the ring, I'll be more than happy to carry it. Now, Drew, go ahead.
You know what? All those people need to owe you an apology, because there is a post on Twitter with him dancing with some hot-ass Latina girl and everything, talking about mental illness. That's a load of bullshit. So if any Ryan Garcia fan wants to comment on my thing, hit me up at Drew Evo. I'll tell you to kiss my ass. And
Again,
at the end of the day...
Again, we don't even know what it is, because his statement was very generic. So all we know, us purist boxing hardcore fans, is that he's not going to fight Javier Fortuna. And if he wants to be included in that 4 kings of the 135 lightweight division that is stacked and everyone is so excited about, he's got to fight. So if he's going to take time away from boxing, then why talk about him anymore? Do you?
You know what?
I'll talk about it when he comes back to the ring. Maybe I feel bad for Oscar, because listen, that Ryan Garcia is a cash cow. That's one thing he is. He's a cash cow for Oscar. And I feel bad for Oscar because, hey, he's literally going to get in the ring and fight himself to earn some of that money.
At the end of the day, Dave, we both had agreements until he fights again. Fuck Ryan Garcia.
Well,
we're done.
I'm not saying that. I don't want to get into it with the Ryan Garcia army. I just want to say I wasn't attacking him, but please, let's not take people off the table that we can't criticize them because it's like all of a sudden you throw up this card and there's no room for criticism. If you're a public figure, you're going to face scrutiny and criticism, just like you and I deserve it if we're putting ourselves out there in public. So I am done with that. But you know what? Let's talk about what happened this Saturday.
Yeah, but I want to say one more thing about
Go ahead.
All these 135-pound youngsters, they talk so much shit and they don't want the smoke. Lomachenko is assigned on the fight Nakatani, a guy that gave Teofimo so much problems. And that's possibly going to be for a mandatory shot at Teofimo. I bet you Lomachenko wins that fight. Teofimo's going to hightail the 140 because he doesn't want no parts of Lomachenko, because he knows Lomachenko will beat Teofimo in a rematch.
I know you're still high on Loma.
Guaranteed that shit.
But listen, that is something to celebrate because, of course, the lightweight division, there was some positive news about this Saturday, and that's the fact that Top Rank released that Lomachenko's coming back to the ring, and he's not going to take an easy mark. Post-shoulder surgery, he's facing Nakatani, one of the dark horses of the weight of the 135-pound division. Nakatani can show up, and we don't know what we're going to see with Loma. But I'll tell you what, like these people we saw fight this Saturday, they're going to leave it all in the ring, and I'm excited about that because that is going to be a great fight. Yes, Santiago Medio says that he has talked about anxiety and his struggles. Yeah, he has talked about that. And there hasn't been very many fighters historically who have come forward during their careers to talk about their personal struggles. We can go through the long list of famous boxers that battled addiction, depression. I mean, they went through it all. Hector Camacho, what he went through when he spiraled into fame. But he showed up to fight. He showed up for all the big fights. And it wasn't until the end of his career that we saw him tailspin completely, right? We just live in a different time. So I really don't want to talk about that anymore. But we're talking about Hector Camacho in New York City. Man, did Top Rank put on a card this weekend, Drew, because out of Florida, they brought their hottest Puerto Rican prospects, and then they headlined the card with Navarrete. Okay, Navarrete, the 126-pound champ from Mexico, the Cowboy, the Vaquero, to fight. This fight was incredible, man. I want to know what people think. I'm going to go to the phone lines. By the way, guys, this show is live. If you want to call in and chime in on, our phone number is 702-710-3627. Drew, we saw the return of one of our boys that we interviewed very early in his career that I saw his fights. I'm talking about Xander Zayas, with a first round knockout, another impressive against a very tall. Some people thought he was going to go rounds, but again, No rounds gone there. Edgar Berlanga with Fat Joe in the house, dude. I gotta ask you, what are your thoughts on Edgar Berlanga finally going the distance as a professional?
Did good. He dominated. He dominated every round, and he got knockdowns. He couldn't put the guy away, but he went and dominated the whole fight. And that's what he actually needed rounds because, to tell you the truth, everybody was thinking, did he have stamina? Okay, he can go 8 rounds. Now, can he go 12 rounds? Can he go in deep waters? And how is he when he goes in deep waters and everything? And now, this is something that he can build off of.
Most definitely. Berlanga's opponent was recently Caleb Plant's sparring partner in Caleb Plant's last camp. He needed the money. He had some really rough times. A lot of people said he did well in Caleb Plant's camp. Now I'm kind of worried. I'm kind of worried if Caleb Plant. I put a poll on Twitter to ask, who's Berlanga ready for of all the champions? And one guy told me he's not ready for any of them. And I totally understand that. But Caleb Plant was the winner in that poll, that Berlanga probably is game ready for Caleb Plant. I mean, he handled his sparring partner with relative ease, knocking him down 4 times. 4 times. What'd you think about that, man? I finally saw him breathe hard. Does his opponent deserve any credit for surviving?
Yeah, he does deserve some type of credit for surviving, but I'm going to be honest. I still think Caleb Plant gives him a boxing lesson and beats him and by a decision. I think he just outboxes Berlanga and probably exposes some flaws in him. And tell you the truth, that might not be a bad thing. That if he exposes some flaws in Edgar Berlanga's game, he can probably work on them. But it's not bad if he loses to one of these champions right now, because it's something to build off of and everything. But right now he's still a prospect. But at the end of the day, maybe it's time to move up in competition. Maybe get him a Callum Smith or a Jesse Hart, which I think Jesse Hart will probably beat Berlanga.
Jesse Hart at Top Rank at 168 pounds was a really formidable opponent. So we're looking to see him take on that caliber of opponent next time. And I'm feeling that. I don't think they need to rush him either, Edgar Berlanga. Clearly, I saw him huffing and puffing. I don't know if you noticed that, but finally going more than past the 6 rounds, I was wondering, okay, now he's finally in deep waters, and I finally am seeing him breathe heavy. But at the end of the day, his power, he just managed. It's a great equalizer, his power, dude. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about young Xander Zayas. Young Xander Zayas, dude, I was there for his first professional fight. Of course, I met him there and was there at his second professional fight. And I can't wait to get back to Las Vegas, Drew. I got plane tickets. I'm fully vaccinated. Okay? I felt like crap last Monday. One of the reasons why I didn't want to do the show. But I'm excited to get back to this Top Rank card. I'm finding out people have been pissed that tickets will be on sale this week sometime for the Jose Ramirez and Joshua Taylor 140-pound unification. Is going to take place at the old Hard Rock Casino, now known as the Virgin. And I have to tell you, as someone that used to go to that place all the time, the Virgin Hotel looks awful, dude. They ruined the Hard Rock. But the venue itself is an amazing venue to watch the fights. So I hope that somehow, some way, your boy Dave from the 408 is going to be in the house for that unification fight. If anybody has any info when the tickets go on sale, please feel free to call me, send me a DM, whatever, because I need to get a hold of some seats, whether it's any way I want to get those seats. Andre Rodriguez says, for me, the fact that Berlanga went the distance is a blessing. He learned more in this fight than ever before and is good for his evolution. I agree completely. Berlanga and Xander Zayas is a long-term commitment that Top Rank has made, and one of the things that they're best at is growing Puerto Rican and young Mexican-American fighters. They're doing a great job moving those kids along, and that's what we want to see, progression, right? In every fight, we want to see them get closer and closer to being contenders and getting themselves up the rankings, and when the time comes, I like to see them challenge themselves. 168-pound. It's where Canelo Alvarez is. By the way, Canelo Alvarez today says, I'm not planning on moving up to 175. This is it for me, I think. A bold statement, Drew. Of course, I know how much you like those Eastern European fighters. Dimitri Bivol makes his return to the ring this weekend. Dimitri Bivol, tons of people want to see Canelo fight Dimitri Bivol. They want to see him fight Arthur Beterbiev. They think those guys could actually give Canelo some fits. But Canelo Alvarez today says, I think this is it for me. 168 pounds. I'm on my way to unifying that. Is that an issue?
I think it's BS that he says he's not going to go to 175. But the thing is, that's if he unifies. This unification might end. This path of unification might end with Billy Joe Sanders. It might be Billy Joe Sanders unifying the division by the Cinco de Mayo.
And I'm anxiously awaiting if by next week you will be willing to make a wager, because we're just 2 weekends away. From what I understand, okay, Florida was really progressive with COVID as far as their policies. This weekend, they turned out not only the top-ranked card with a full audience, or a very large audience, but the UFC was completely sold out in Jacksonville, Florida. They sold that out. But now it's time for Texas. I hear that there's 68,000 tickets have been sold for this Canelo Alvarez. And let me remind you that BJ Saunders doesn't have the luxury of his UK fans or Irish traveler fans coming to see it, because there's still restrictions. So it's going to be a enormously Canelo Alvarez friendly stadium. Not only does he have to contend with that, but he's got to contend with the fact that he's not going to get a decision in the state of Texas. I mean, we could ask Paulie Malignaggi if judges are friendly to out-of-state people, let alone out-of-the-country people, in getting a decision. Your boy BJ Saunders is going to have to essentially knock out. He's going to have to knock out Canelo Alvarez. So
I think he's going to win a clear-cut decision over the Canelo. Because I'll tell you the truth, if it seems that he's outboxing Canelo the whole night and out countering him, and you don't give him a decision, then it's rigged.
Andre Rodriguez says, Ryan's withdrawal is what? Is it legit and reasonable, justified, or something else way less honorable? Drew, I want to share a personal story before we move on to the Navarettediaz fight, okay? A lot of people don't know this, but your boy Dave from the 408, when he was in his early 20s, he wanted nothing more than to be Hollywood. I wanted to be an actor, all right? And I had done something in college that most people had never done. I was already a union actor for the stage. I was getting paid to act on stage, an accomplishment in itself. So I got myself a legitimate talent agent to get me some Hollywood auditions. I was living in San Francisco, all right? For a whole year. And you had no idea how big my ego was, because I had to have a big ego to pursue this dream of mine. I wanted to be an actor. For a whole year, I went to audition after audition for commercials, for movies, for whatever came my way. Nothing. Rejected the entire time. Deflating my ego. Just breaking me down. And there was a TV show called Nash Bridges with Miami Vice, the guy from Miami Vice, Don Johnson, and Cheech and Chong's Cheech Marin. It was a hit TV show filmed in San Francisco. And my agent got me an audition to be Cheech's cousin or young nephew, an attorney. Dude, I looked nothing like an attorney. I was in my early 20s. Not only did I kill 2 auditions, they tell me, you got to call back. It's between you and one guy to be Cheech's nephew on the TV show, speaking role. This was it for me, dude. I was going to get my SAG card. Anyone who knows the Screen Actors Guild card. My whole life would have changed. I would have been a union actor for film and television. And I'll tell you what, I would have packed my bags and moved to Los Angeles, because then I knew I had made it. I was legit. My agent gives me what they call these, they give you these sheets, right? Like a side of a scene. And they said, memorize it because you're going to be at the final callback for this part. All right? I thought I nailed it. I memorized the lines. I go to the audition, was full of confidence. And who's in front of me at that audition but Don Johnson himself, Mr. Miami Vice? I forgot all the lines, dude. I forgot everything. I crashed under pressure. I was going to play Cheech. Do you know how much I love Cheech and Cheech and Chong? I was going to play Cheech's cousin and actually have an interaction with him on screen, become a union actor, and move to Hollywood. I forgot all my lines. Got cracked under pressure. I had never done that. Completely failed. After a year of trying my hardest to break into film and television, I ruined my one shot. The next day, I have a conversation with my agent, and she told me something they tell every actor. Dave, if there's something other in your life that you want to do, other than be an actor, then go do that. Because this business isn't for you. And after I gave it some thought, Drew, I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of shit I'd rather do with my life than just this and constantly getting rejected. I'm not cut out for it. But nobody praised me. Not my family, not my friends. They all said, you're a quitter, dude. You're a quitter. How are you going to get anywhere in life if when you have one failure, you just say, I'm done with it. But that's what I did because I wasn't cut out for it. And I moved on, and other people I know made it in Hollywood. In fact, I know a guy, I have to watch him on sitcoms that I grew up with. You know how much that eats me alive when I see a guy that I knew and I grew up with on commercials and sitcoms? But it is what it is, man. Everything happens in life for a reason. I wasn't meant to be an actor. There it is. All right, to Andre, I don't know what Ryan's reason is for pulling out. Does anybody really know his motivation? We're not allowed to question it because we'll get attacked for questioning it. So, again, why bother questioning it? Why bother even talking about it? You know, let's talk about these fighters. Let's get back because I'm already out of the mood. Let's get back to boxing this weekend because Top Rank put on this amazing card. And let's talk about the return of El Vaquero Navarrete because I can't believe this guy. First round 1 and 2 was not the Navarrete we know, okay? The guy was barely doing anything. And then what? Turns the fight around with that vicious, famous uppercut of his. But Diaz kept coming. Diaz kept coming, dude. And he can box. And he has a chin on him. Well, I guess his chin failed him in the end. He was dropped 4 times. But this guy put in the performance of his lifetime. And it just wasn't enough. But let me say this about Navarrete that I love. Did you notice what was wrong with the guy? Amongst several things. Aside from the fact that his knee, something's definitely wrong with his knee. It was taped up and they said his knee it's been acting up in camp. The guy was stretching his back midway through the fight several times. Something's wrong with his back too. When he came into this fight injured, possibly with a shot knee, maybe he needs reconstructive knee surgery. I don't know. I'm speculating. He didn't come in his best condition and it showed because the wrecking machine to me that Navarrete is would have put out Diaz in 9 rounds or less. But Diaz almost made it to the very end. So I have to congratulate Diaz because there was 2 fights on that card that were sensational. And one of them was on the pre-cards, and that's Adorno not from Philadelphia, but from Allentown, just outside Philly. The Adorno brothers, 2 Puerto Rican brothers that my friend Jay Chaudhry produced a film for Boxing Moms. Those guys got a bright future. That fight was sensational too. Let me ask the chat, what was the fight that you most enjoyed? Was it Navarrete or did you catch Adorno versus Ortiz? I had Ortiz up winning 6 rounds and Adorno with 2 massive knockdowns, man. That fight was ruled a draw, but I had it for Jermaine Ortiz by 1 round. Again, not mad at it, man. 2 prospects that were 14-0. What's your thoughts on that, Drew, on those Adorno brothers, Puerto Rican kids from Philadelphia?
They do got bright futures. They really do. I also had it for Martinez or Ortiz. Ortiz, I also had it very close.
But it reminds us of the fight, the very first fight where Tyson Fury was dropped. and the scorecard ended up being a draw, right? I mean, it kind of mirrored that fight. I want to see.
But the difference was Tyson Fury won 10 rounds. This fight was actually close.
This fight was very competitive, very close. If you were looking for the clean and effective power punching accuracy, Adorno had it. Diaz is the technician that he calls himself, the technician. Ortiz, my apologies. Jermaine Ortiz. He's a fantastic boxer. And I'm telling you right now, if that had been a 10-round fight or a 12-round fight, those two kids probably could have been on the Fight of the Year contender. Nobody's mad at that fight being a draw. I'm not seriously mad about it because I'm telling you, those kids will probably meet again, and they both learned something from that fight. Now, this Navarettediaz fight, I just want to talk about sportsmanship, man. Look at this guy. These two guys, after that sensational fight, look at the sportsmanship there, man. Dressed up, all smiles, both wearing those fantastic Mexican hats. They left it all in the ring, man. That Puerto Rican crowd was a little bit hard on Navarrete, but of course, that's to be expected. Navarrete came into the backyard of Florida, a largely Puerto Rican audience, and Diaz put on a show. And for once, I don't have to take a week off of boxing to talk about YouTubers fighting or Thriller pay-per-views or what Snoop Dogg is doing, man. Overall, I couldn't have been more pleased. Santiago Emilio, yeah, the Boxing Mom documentary was very well done. Yeah, Santiago Emilio, that's my friend Jay Chaudhry. So shout out to Jay Chaudhry who produced that. He's now at Players TV, and I hope to have him on this. But I definitely enjoy, boxers are people. Boxers are human beings just like you and I. All elite athletes are. And we get a chance to peek into their worlds. I really appreciate that. Ryan Garcia is a human being just like us all. And I hope sharing the story about my personal failures, I hope that sheds some light on what I was trying to communicate on Twitter. I ain't knocking anybody. The closest people in my family suffer from bipolar. It's a nasty disease. But I just want to talk about boxers. Let's see here. Santiago Emilio, Robert Garcia managed the Adorno brothers recently until 2020. Now they are with David McWater, split team management. That is a very far distance from a couple of kids from Pennsylvania to be working out with Robert Garcia. But of course, I'm sure they learned a ton of things working with Robert Garcia, trainer of the year multiple times. I mean, who doesn't he have in camp? Right now he's training Jose Ramirez, of course, Ortiz. Nando Lamas says Adorno looked out of shape, kind of sloppy. It wasn't the performance I was expecting from Adorno at all. And that's why I appreciate with Jermaine Ortiz, when they bring in a guy who's not signed by Top Rank, the guy's got no contract. He's a free agent. They're bringing you in to lose. Despite you having a 14-0 record, they don't really think you are going to win. And sometimes, like in our friend Francisco Esparza, from Las Vegas that we've had on our show co-host, sometimes you put on the fight of your life like he did in Reno under the Shakur Stevenson card, and you're still lobbying Bob Arum to get a contract for 3 fights. You know what I mean? He had that same situation. He put on the show of his life as a free agent, and he was still trying to get a contract signed with Top Rank after the fact. So anyhow, Drew, it's time for our predictions. Let's move on because unless you got some final thoughts on Navarrete and the 126-pound division.
I like to see him unify. I think that's the next big step for Navarrete. I think maybe Gary Russell Jr. That'd be a good fight. More technical fighter with hand speed against power Navarrete, and see if the speed can destroy the power. And tell you the truth, the speed mostly beats the power.
I mean, that's an old adage in the sport of boxing for sure. Let's make no mistake. I mean, Gary Russell's inactivity is what bothers me the most, but that's a very exciting fight. I mean, Navarrete is a performer, 2-division champion. And with his long arms, who knows? I mean, he may go up to 130 someday, right? But Vaquero, Santiago Media also agrees with you, Drew. He says Vaquero versus Russell for unification. I definitely want to see a healthy Navarrete. There was something wrong with his knee, clearly. I think his back was spasming. Like, I know the feeling. I have back problems, right? When you start stretching it out, your back is spasming. Nando Lamas thinks 130 is all wrong, Navarrete. Could be. I mean, he's got enough height and he's got enough length in his arms. I mean, his reach is phenomenal. His reach is unusual for a guy, but he doesn't look ripped at 126 pounds, right? It's classic Mexican physique where it appears that we're soft around the midsection and whatnot, and he's not overly muscular. It could be a stretch too far. He could be a 126 champion that reigns right up until he meets Gary Russell Jr., and then we'll see, right? And then we'll see. But what I heard recently is that they're thinking about Shakur Stevenson's leftovers. A guy I saw a fight where Shakur Stevenson took that belt from in Reno. I'm not interested in seeing those fights. I mean, I do want to see Navaretti defend his belt against really credible top 5, 126 pounders, man. So I appreciate all these comments in the chat. If you guys want to call and talk about any of these fights, a mini margarita. Yeah, if you guys still want to, the phone line is still open. If not, you can participate in the chat, 702-710. But Drew, there's some really good fights this weekend. Unfortunately, the PBC card, and I'm talking about Andy Ruiz, the return of Andy Ruiz and Chris Arreola, the battle of the taco trucks, as I like to put it, is a pay-per-view. So unless you are one of these people who are streaming things illegally, you might have to pay $50 for it. By the way, what were you telling me is going on with this illegal streaming stuff?
Well, Trino is actually suing 11 sites for illegally putting their pay-per-view event with Jake Paul and Ben Askren on their site. And tell you the truth, I don't blame those sites for doing it. Who wants to pay the hard-earned money to see Jake Paul fight an MMA fighter that cannot punch, that is slow as hell, and only is 19-2 because of his wrestling, not his striking? And I want to call out boxers, pro boxers, actually. Well, why don't you just go make him fight you and shut him the fuck up and knock him the fuck out? Seriously, when is this dude gonna fight a ranked opponent in a boxing ring? Like, seriously, like.
Well, here's a guy I was thinking about, because he's rapidly rising with Instagram followers, Instagram fame, social media fame. It's Edgarberlanga. He has nothing to lose fighting someone like Jake Paul, and I, for one, would love to see Jake Paul against Edgarberlanga. 168 pounds to 190. So I mean, Edgarberlanga is made for that. I mean, he's a showman, right? He's a showman. He's hip hop. He represents Brooklyn. He's very popular with the demographics between 18 and 30. I mean, this kid is becoming incredibly popular very fast, even with a casual audience. I wouldn't be mad because, like you said, I'm waiting for a pro boxer, someone who actually is a professional boxer to fight him. Maybe someone even who had amateur experience, somebody.
Like, I like to tell you the truth. I like to have a cruiserweight, maybe the WBO cruiserweight champion, I forget his name, fight Jake Paul. Since he's fighting around 190, that's cruiserweight, technically, right? It's
cruiserweight, a little bit undersized for a cruiserweight. Honestly, he should melt down if he's going to be a professional fighter. And I really don't want to talk about Jake Paul other than what he did at UFC. I want to move on to next week's fights. He should melt down to light heavyweight. He should melt down to light heavyweight.
I want him to get knocked the hell out. I want somebody to put him to sleep for the next 5 minutes.
A lot of people do, and that includes the UFC, because he showed up in a private jet and teased the audience, and he really upset people. He had Dan Cormier, who trains out of San Jose, a former UFC champion, got into it. Today, Dan Cormier says, I'd fight you, but it's got to be in the cage. And I, for one, don't have a problem with that. You know,
I don't have a problem with it either, but Jake Paul don't have no boss. Jake Paul wants to try to fight somebody in a boxing match because he knows he has the advantage, because he knows, here's the thing. You wonder why Triller won't put him against a ranked pro boxer? Because those guys grew up doing it. And Triller is making a mockery of fighters that have died, like Patrick Day, like Bruce Samorf in like several years ago when he fought Carlos Perez and is not able to walk. He's not able to move his arms anymore because he was in a coma. He had so much brain damage because he kept on going in his heavyweight fight. And now his kids can't even play. Now he can't even play for his kids. Adonis Stevenson that got into a coma and almost died. He's making a mockery out of all that shit. And it's not fucking right. And Turner shouldn't be doing this, and it's not fucking right. And you got motherfuckers like Snoop Dogg and Oscar De La Hoya disrespecting pro boxers, and Snoop Dogg doesn't have the balls to go into a boxing ring and risk his fucking life. And Oscar De La Hoya, out of all people, should know where fucking pro boxers are coming from because he fucking done it.
Listen, I have to disagree. I have to disagree a little bit with the chat that says that he actually has power. The truth is that there is no weight division 190, right? Isn't that undersized for a cruiserweight?
It's undersized for a cruiserweight, but it's technically still cruiserweight because he is over 175.
When will you see a top cruiserweight coming in so light? You won't, because these guys are in their 200s, 225 melting down, 215 melting way down. And they look like monsters. So I don't know if he has any power if you force the kid to melt down to 175, where we would see a strong six-pack like a real boxer. I don't know if he has any power against like Dimitri Bivol or Arthur Beterbiev. We don't know if he has any power. But Tommy Fury, just to end this conversation about Jake Paul, Tommy Fury, they say, is interested in fighting him, and that's your boy's relative. I'm talking about the Gypsy Traveler.
5 wins, 5 knockouts as a pro light heavyweight. I wouldn't mind seeing it. Maybe, Tommy Fury will probably knock him out.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that either. All right, now let's get one last comment. I did want to bring this point up because the Shakur Stevenson, Andre Rodriguez says, Shakur is the only one I see beating Navarrete. There was a little bit of Twitter stuff going on back and forth because let's remember that Shakur couldn't make 126 much anymore. He just couldn't. This kid is growing. He's extremely strong for the division. He actually had an opportunity to fight Navarrete. He vacated the belt, moved on from that. Now people are ringing with, hey, why don't they fight Navarrete and Shakur? Shakur, in my opinion, I love Navarrete, but that is the wrong fighter for him. Despite Ruben Villa beating Shakur twice in the amateurs, today's version of Shakur Stevenson will probably dominate just like we saw Oscar Valdez dominate Burchelt. He made Burchelt look like a fool. And so, yeah, Shakur Stevenson, I agree with the chat, whoever put that in there. Andre Rodriguez, I don't see Navarrete doing well against a Shakur, so I don't want to see him matched up against a Shakur. The guy's too big, too strong, too fast. But Gary Russell is fair game. Gary Russell's kind of small in size.
You know what? You're saying he's too fast, but Navarrete times him. It's a whole different ball game. Like, you can time speed at the end.
Yeah.
If he can time Shakur Stevenson, it's a whole different ball game, and all he has to do is catch him on one big punch, and it changes the game.
Absolutely. So Drew, this weekend coming up, we have a DAZN card. And nobody's got to pay for this if you pay for the fee. Those are guys that you like, Chisora and Parker from New Zealand. I saw Parker's fight. I'm shocked. I didn't even know he was going to be fighting this weekend. Chisora's a live dog. He's been in there with everybody. Parker, a former world champion, in my opinion, looked awful in his last fight. Like, it was just like, what, a month ago? 6 weeks ago? It was awful. And here's the irony. Your boy Parker is 29 years old and Chisora is 37. I'm going to have to pick Chisora for this one this weekend. Just based on, you're only as good as your last performance. And Chisora, to me, looks fresher than Parker. I don't know what was up with Parker. I know they've got no COVID, supposedly, in New Zealand. But Nando Lamas agrees with me. He says Parker was disappointing. I'm over him. Who's your pick this weekend, Chisora or Parker?
I think Parker's going to win this still. I really, here's the thing. Chisora, he's going to be game and everything, but I just don't think that he's going to be able to beat Parker. And never know. There might be a chance Parker could stop Chisora. But I really think Parker wins this by decision. I just think that he might be at the end too much for Chisora, and Chisora might tire out.
Chisora does have stamina issues. Santiago Medio is reminding us that Katie Taylor is also on the undercard. Yes, shout out to women's boxing. That's something favorable too. I mean, the zone card is got some pretty good stars. First of all, I'm very excited to see the return of Dimitri Bivol, who hasn't fought in a year. Not excited about his opponent. So it's kind of a tune-up fight. Let's get back in shape. Let's get back out there. Dimitri Bivol, somebody that is dangerous at 175 pounds. Chris Eubank Jr., 160 pounds. Today, they're talking about a couple of things. Eddie Hearn doesn't know what to do with Boo Boo Andrade. He's testing the water and asking PBC if they'd be interested in a Charlo fight. And in fact, he says, I'll bring Boo Boo Andrade for one fight over to PBC and you guys show it as a pay-per-view. I'm willing to give you that. I'm willing to go over there. PBC ain't biting. So now we're hearing there's a possibility that, first of all, Eubanks is ranked number 1 in the WBA, but Eddie Hearn would like to see Eubanks, who's also a DAZN fighter, against Boo Boo Andrade. Good fight, bad fight.
I love that match.
It's a good fight. It's in-house, and we're most likely going to see that eventually because despite Eubanks Jr. being ranked number 1 at WBA, it looks like Gennady Golovkin, 39-year-old Gennady Golovkin, is going to get that fight against Ryota Murata from Japan at 160 pounds. That's who is looking to be fighting Triple G sometime before the end of the year, which kind of puts Eubanks Jr. out of the picture. Again, hey, it's a title shot against Boo Boo Andrade. You know, I would take that too. I'm excited for that too. I got to read this comment. Jermell Charlo is regressing and he barely started eating solid food at middleweight.
You know what? I got to say something when it comes to Charlo. I was looking at a tweet from this dude. I think his last name's Conway. And he's a PBC fanboy. And he talks about why PBC fighters don't get the big fights against and like, you know, they don't get respect because he said Canelo didn't fight nobody. Let me just say something. I'm one of Canelo's biggest critics, but he's fighting people now. And the list is questionable of the fighters he fought because of the end of their careers, but the fighters that he brought up are Charlo, Benavidez, and Caleb Plant. Now, I'm going to give Conway, I hope you're watching this eventually. I'm going to give you an education real quick on why those fighters don't get the respect that you think they deserve. Number one, Jermall Charlo hasn't fought Jack. When he was offered a fight with Boo Boo Andrade, he doesn't want to fight Boo Boo Andrade because Boo Boo Andrade will give him a boxing lesson and kick his ass. David Benavidez hasn't fought nobody but an Asian Anthony Durrell. Let me tell you about David Benavidez. David Benavidez has no inside game whatsoever. He's easy pickings for Canelo Alvarez. And he's easy pickings for the third guy on that list is Caleb Plant, which I think out of all three of them, Caleb Plant is the best one out of them. I think. Oh,
you think Caleb Plant is the best one out of? I was like, for once, wow, Drew thinks that Canelo could beat up David Benavidez. This is breaking news to me. Breaking news. But now you're telling me Caleb Plant also beats Canelo.
I always say Caleb Plant can beat Canelo Alvarez. He holds the tools to beat Canelo Alvarez. He's the best out of all three of those fighters. So if he wants to talk about why they don't, but the thing is, where's his resume? Caleb Trulix, an Asian fighter, and everything. So, Mr. Conway, at the end of the day, I just gave you an education on boxing. And I hope you understand where I'm coming from about this. And I can reply to you on Twitter and everything, because maybe if I explain this educational lesson to you, you'll understand and stop being just a PBC fanboy and try to learn about boxing the inside out and actually stop being a biased dude for once. Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, So it looks like Charlo is going to be fighting Benavidez. And that's why they're not interested at all in working with DAZN and Eddie Hearn and whatnot. So somebody's moving up and wait for what they think would be a super fight. I like the fight. I mean, I just want to see these guys challenge themselves. David Benavidez has been fighting soft opposition in his last few fights. I want to see more out of David Benavidez. He was the champion. He lost the championship twice. Once for cocaine, once on the scale. If you want to talk about someone who has personal issues, it's David Benavidez. I mean, it's documented. He's literally lost his championship. I want to see the guy challenge himself. How is he ever going to get Canelo to face him and take him on if he doesn't step up? Charlo is a good fight, but let's be honest. Charlo is a 160-pound fighter who just moved up from 154 a couple years back or a year ago.
I do want to reply to this comment. Santino Mia, I think Charlo beats Benavidez because of the lack of the inside game. I think Charlo might outbox him enough to win the fight. I just really think David Benavidez lacks the inside game, and that's a really big part of why I don't think if you put him up a top class fighter, he does not beat them unless that guy goes toe to toe with him, and then he can use his reach and everything. But other than that, the guy gets inside. Benavidez is a sitting duck at the end of the day.
So here's my beef with Benavidez, and I have to partially agree with you. He's got this incredible reach for the division. And at full extension of his shots, he's dangerous. And it gives him room to throw those flashy combinations, which is the name of our show, the Shoeshine. When he does his shoeshines and has the room and gives himself the proper distance, he's extremely dangerous. But lately, he's been starting very late in his last performance. He's getting off really, really slow. And then he closes the show when he gets going. And he's just not going to have that opportunity against Charlo to start slow. He's not going to have that opportunity in the fight of his life. If he gets this Canelo Alvarez fight at 168, it's going to have to be from the get 0 to 100 real quick. He's not going to have that. And he's going to have to control the distance, which is incredibly hard to control the distance against Canelo because lately Canelo controls everything, right? But let's read this one comment. Jermel and his team must not think they can beat Benavidez. Why all of the excuses? Oh, man. Thank you for that comment, Nando Lamas. So, Drew, across this card, the Katie Taylor, Eubanks Jr. back in the ring, Bivol. We got that PBC pay-per-view. And I got to tell you, I'm excited about some of these prospects. For one thing, California is finally getting a fight with a live audience. I checked this morning. And I can't believe that you can go to the Dignity Park. There was still some tickets available, and I clicked at the website access.com. $5,000 to see Arreola Ruiz. That's what's left over. I got a hard time paying $50 for that fight. The StubHub, formerly known as the StubHub Center, a professional soccer stadium, one of the best places you can watch professional boxing. Really open air. If you're worried about COVID, it's open air. They're going to have distancing and whatnot. Really hard justifying to see an in-shape Ruiz beat up. Who knows what Arreola looks like? I haven't seen anything what Arreola looks like. Yeah, $5,000. I looked. There were still seats available here and there, but they're going to cost you. And I really hope I don't run into that to go see this top-ranked card fight in Nevada. But I'm excited that there's a live audience. Some things are returning to normalcy. $50. But listen, there's a kid that we interviewed over Leave It in the Ring at HCP, and I'm talking about G Funky and D Styles. We met the kid online. Jesus Ramos Jr. is a southpaw from Phoenix. He comes from a boxing family. He was dominating. I mean, just about all knockouts at 140 pounds. He's officially moved up to 147, and I expect to see some flashiness, some greatness this weekend from this kid. Everybody's raving about Xander Zayas. He's quickly gaining a following with all. I mean, he deserves it. He's a modest kid, humble, hardworking. He's in the gym 24/7. But Jesus Ramos Jr. and his family, Abel Ramos, who will always be on the also be on the card. That is a hard-working boxing family out of Arizona, man. And I'm definitely looking forward to them. And we probably could have talked to him. That's how nice he is. We could have talked to him tonight. But it's fight week. They only got time for real press. Imagine that. One day we might be real press. So maybe we can talk to him next week. But yeah, if you get to watch the pay-per-view, pay close attention to Jesus Ramos Jr. because we know PBC's got stacks of welterweights over there. And this one could be one of their future stars. Future stars. Yeah, I want to put this one right here. I'm pumped for it. I haven't been until this week. Arreola looks in shape, but he's at the end of the career. I might just have to buy the $50 pay-per-view. I don't know yet. Still disappointed with Andy, but maybe I'll do it. I don't know if I'm going to pay for the pay-per-view yet, but I also know that I don't want to miss it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got to see it live.
That's a prediction.
Here it is, guys.
Rounds.
Mr. Drew Evo, what is your call? Who's out in 6 rounds?
Arreola goes to sleep one more time, and then at the end of the fight, at end of 6 rounds, he's going to tell you how much he fucked up again.
It's been a great career for Arreola. Many boxing for Mexican-American fans. We finally had someone we could rally with, a California Chicano kid, a guy who got to fight for the world championship twice against Klitschko, nonetheless, a guy who reigned for so many years. All heart, maybe not the best conditioning, zero conditioning, zero discipline when it comes to diet, self-admittedly, emotional guy, but we had to rally because at the time it was all we had. And then you got Andy Ruiz, who did the impossible, another guy described as a Teletubby, who got the job done, who did the impossible, who was brought in to lose to Anthony Joshua and knocked him out. A moral victory for Chris Arreola is going 12 rounds. But honestly, I don't want to see this guy. I honestly don't want to see Chris Arreola take too much punishment. He's got a beautiful family. I'm ready to see him ride into the sunset and retire.
Dude, Andy Ruiz is down to 255.
He said he was going to come in phenomenal shape, and he looks it, and it could be all of as a result of who he's working with, Eddie Reynoso and the Canelo Alvarez camp. It could be that he finally has been disciplined. But like I said last week on Thursday on the roundtable, I want to see what happens next. I want to see what happens to Andy Ruiz immediately after this win. A very predictable win. Andy Ruiz might stop him under 12. You said 6. I'm gonna say somewhere between 9 and 12. He gets the job done. I don't want to see Arreola hurt. Big fan of Arreola. Appreciate everything he's done for the boxing community, for Mexican-American fight fans. Just a nice guy, the Riverside guy. So anyways, yeah, looking forward to that. And I think it's time to wrap up this party. All right, Drew. It's been great. I'm loving interacting with people. I'm loving the chat. I appreciate being part of this Leave It in the Ring family. Of course, Drew and I have been doing this for a while, but we're now just on the YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, or you're new to the channel, or you have a friend in our boxing community who hasn't checked out our show, please share it, man. I really appreciate everyone who comes in here and talks. Don't forget, tomorrow night we have the HCP. Are you down with D Styles on D Styles YouTube channel? I'm sure he's got something cooking. I'm sure him and G Funky got something cooking good for the rest of the week. And then we have 2 cards on Saturday night, man. I'm looking forward to that, of course. I'm looking forward to interaction with people. Hit us up at the Mike and Dave 1 or at Drew Evo on social media. And also, anyone that's in this room right now, if you guys want to hit me up on Twitter at my DM and you want to come in and be a third co-host on a Monday night, if you're free, let me know on Twitter, DM me. I'd be more than happy to entertain you guys coming on and giving a shot to a third co-host, rotating co-host. I think Drew agrees. It'd be nice to have somebody else. We love it when Rob Boxing is on. Rob Boxing, our friend. When he's on, he just brings another dimension to the show, and everybody is invited. Whether you want to call, chat, or participate. I'm Dave from the 408 from the Shoeshine. Drew, I'll check you out next week, man. Everybody have a great week. Peace.